So my name's Anthony Judd. I'm the, I have to change my little tagline, won't I? CEO of the Buloke Shire Council. And obviously we've worked, or certainly taken the lead from the North Central LEN, who have partnered with us on this project. So I will start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land in which we meet today, noting that I'm on Dja Dja Wurrung country. I pay my respects to elders past and present, and also invite you to do the same. So yeah, it's amazing to have so many stakeholders, service providers, community members together. You know, the old saying, it takes a village. This is a village, it feels like, doesn't it? And I think it shows a real commitment to our young people, and which is critical, and it's really critical. It's the way that we all want to start our young people's best starts in life, and I think understanding some of the data and the issues that we have is the way to hopefully drive discussions, to drive decisions, and to drive action. So I'm going to pass over to Rose Harris, who's our Director of Community Development, to give more of context on today's session and the project.
Thanks, Anthony. And it's great to see so many faces coming together around our youngest, our littlest residents of Buloke. It's really exciting to see so many people coming together today for what I'm sure you're wondering what you're even here for. And we certainly hope by the end of it, we've created the foundations for a really great conversation. As Anthony said, I'm the Director of Community Development here at the Buloke Shire, and I'm extremely fortunate in my directorate to be able to have a good look at the full lifespan of people in Buloke, from maternal and child health to immunisation to kindergartens and libraries, and right through to in-home aged care. So I'm really passionate about getting the best outcomes for people across that span in Buloke, and this is really exciting for us. We know for good planning, we need good data, and there's a lot of critical planning that comes out of local government at a local level. And on top of that, it's probably not lost on any of you here that it's hard to find good data for Buloke. We're often in the middle of different catchments, or our population numbers don't speak well to be able to capture the levels of data and then identify the trends that we need to support, the ones that are going well, and the gaps that we might need to look at and combine on turning the dial on. So I'd like to go back to the first conversation I had with Jane one day and said, look, we've got all these plans we need to get out, but I feel like we're missing a critical link around conversation and data in our communities. In the work I do, as well as being a parent myself and bringing up little people in our communities. And through a range of different conversations, it's really fantastic to be at this point, to be able to bring you in on the conversation of the State of Buloke Children's and Young People Report and some of the great programs and exciting things we've got planned on the other side of that. I think the most important thing is we know we can't make a change or a difference in the lives of young people on our own. No one of us, no organisation, no government entity, no not-for-profit can go out there and do it all on their own. It only comes through great community partnerships and ownership of communities over that change. And I think it's really important to see some of the benefits, not only through the collective approach, but also the sustainability that builds when we can all see where we can have an impact and work towards that. So we're really looking forward, as you are, as council. This is the first time we've really been able to get a good look at what this report is and what it's telling us. I think one of the really critical points, though, is that we're not saying that it's perfect. We know data in Buloke never is. So there's often bits that we want to be able to create the conversation. Maybe there's things you'll see today that you don't agree with or don't add up with what you do within our Buloke communities. That's the exact conversation we want to be able to have. We're leading into a critical planning cycle through council plan, community vision, but critically the municipal early years plan and the youth strategy. We want to really put some tangible actions down on those plans that we can all combine on the other side. I have the great pleasure of introducing Lisa McCoy. Now Lisa's the co-founder and director of local logic place, and she undertakes community engagement, consultation, planning and research across Victorian communities. She's got a background in human services, community development and project management in both Canada and Australia, spanning almost 30 years. On top of that, Lisa, I think maybe has a bit of a soft spot for Buloke. She gets what goes on here. She understands bringing up young people in rural communities and how important it is to have the right information to be able to plan well for that. Her extensive experience has helped her to understand a range of complex needs, and her expertise lie in effective and inclusive community engagement and consultation research. She's got a range of different qualifications that enables her to do this, but most of all, she's really passionate about it. So Lisa's going to take over from me and go through, but just before she does, I'd just like to really pay respect to the partnership here between the Shire and the LEN that will hopefully be able to enable this conversation to go forward. Over to you, Lisa.
Thank you, Rose. Thanks for that. And I think that we're going to invite some questions in the chat. Jane, I don't know if you wanted to say anything about that and how that might be managed as we go. We're just mindful of not having to wait till the end if there were burning things that people were keen to ask.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. I'm Jane Hosking, the Executive Officer of the North Central LEN, for the few people that don't know me. And thank you for that great introduction, Rose. And we would definitely encourage chat throughout the presentation that Lisa's going to do for us. She's going to walk us through, but if you've got a burning question, please pop it in the chat, and she's given us permission to interrupt her. So we will do that. And then there will be opportunity at the end for a bit more Q&A, but I just think we think it's really important to have the opportunity when it pops into your head to ask that question. So please pop it straight into the chat and we'll be watching that. Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Jane. Thank you. So Rose is absolutely right. I do have a soft spot for Buloke. And when I used to live at Lake Boga and work for St. Luke's some years ago, I did a lot of work in Buloke and have done some other planning work in the Shire. I love little rural communities, and it's where I do most of my work. So it was great to be able to work with Jane and Rose and Barry around framing this report and what we hoped it could be and how it could support planning and just showing how children and young people are faring in Buloke. So I do have some slides, and like I said, feel free to jump in and ask some questions. We couldn't speak to all of the report. There's quite a lot in there, but we've tried to pull out some key things to speak to. I did want to start with just saying, and I think that most people in the room would know about what the research says about the early years and the importance of those first few years. So it is a time that sets up people for their adult life. And as Rose said, in the work that they're doing, and certainly the LEN, where you're looking across childhood to adolescence and even adulthood, you can see the benefits of some of that work early on. And likewise, adolescence is a really important time. So many changes that happen. And the research does talk also about this being a second catch-up period. So for those that think, as important as the early years are, adolescence is still a good chance for us to do something and make a difference. So understanding the data and where communities can place their efforts is really important as well. So in terms of the report, we framed it around 4 key domain areas, which we, if those people are familiar with ERACI, but also the state of Victoria and the state of Bendigo did some children and young people reports. And so we looked at those and we basically shaped the domain areas off of those and the nest, which is through ERACI. So safe and secure, resourced, healthy, and learning and participating are our 4 key domain areas. In terms of data, we looked at over 80, or we've captured over 80 data sets. We certainly looked at more. They weren't always available, but we did get a good range of data that we could present in the report. And I know that Rose talked in her introduction about the importance of data informing planning, and absolutely all the evidence talks about the importance of that, and certainly where you know, we can do planning around addressing disadvantage even more important. So I mentioned the gaps before. The 3 key gap areas of why we couldn't get data was it wasn't available at a local level. So some of the data is really only captured and presented at a regional level. Some of the data was unavailable because of small numbers. So showing the data may have compromised confidentiality. And some of the data just wasn't systematically collected. And one of the things that I found was really invaluable that I wanted to mention was the Middle Years Development Index, the MDI. So for those that know that, that's looking at years 4 to 9, and that data was collected in 2017 and then again in 2019. And that data plugged so many gaps for us, particularly in relation to young people's mental health. There was a real gap there around being able to access data that was local to Buloke. In the report, we presented the data. You might notice where the big green dot is. That dot would either be green, red, or yellow. So green meaning Buloke's faring better than Victoria. Red is where they're faring worse, and yellow would be faring comparably. But we also included the trending. So where we could, we trended over time so that we could just get a picture of how we're going. And certainly what we found, and I know Jane and I have spoken a bit about this, is that the green dot doesn't always tell the story. So if you look at this one in particular, yes, faring better, but over time doing worse. So having that picture of trend we thought was really important and tells a good part of the story. So in terms of trends, we looked at where we're faring worse but improving, faring better but worsening, faring comparably but improving, faring comparably but worsening, and then also, and sorry it's not on this slide, faring worse and worsening. And then we also put down, even though, you know, it's probably not a lot of data to trend, we also use the 2017, 2019 MDI data to help show what was going on there. So I'm not sure how much people are across Buloke and the data. I just thought I'd include a couple of little demographic things. One of the things that I found very interesting was the fact that mothers don't birth in the Buloke Shire. And in fact, Barry shared with me data that mothers are had birthed at 13 different hospitals in the 2019-2020 year. 61 babies were born, and the births over time, over the last 5 years, have been relatively stable. So there hasn't been a real decline in births, although the census data and Victoria in future modeling does predict population decline over time for Buloke. In 2016, there was 1,533 children and young people aged 0 to 24 and 533 0 to 8-year-olds. 36% of families were couples with children and 12% were one-parent families. And I think from memory, that's a lower number of one-parent families than the Victorian average. In terms of SEIFA and the Index of Relative Socioeconomic Disadvantage, it is showing that things are improving over time in terms of economic disadvantage. So in 2006, Buloke was the 8th most disadvantaged LGA in the state, and now they're rated 24 out of 79. So things are improving over time. When I look at that, I wonder, because that's based on 2016, I wonder what the next lot of data will show in terms of significant years of drought, and then now on the back of COVID. So always good to question these things when you say them. And as people would probably know, the evidence does show poor outcomes for people who are living in disadvantaged neighborhoods. So we do, I guess, look at that and think, what can we do in terms of poverty, and how can we better resource families? So I'm just going to take one little breath there. I didn't know if anyone had any comments or questions that are coming through. And then I thought I might just talk a little bit about the trends that were standing out.
We don't have any questions or comments yet, Lisa.
Great. I'll just have a sip of water.
Very good.
So in terms of the first slide, I just want to talk about the trends that showed that the indicators were faring worse than Victoria, but actually improving over time. So the first one is the infants that are receiving a maternal and child health home consultation. Healthcare card holders are also, there's a decrease in that. More people are accessing the internet. And I might say for those last two indicators, that's for whole of community. It's not just 0 to 24. And then going into some of the AEDC data, developmentally on track, language and cognitive skills has shown an improvement, although still faring worse than Victoria. So has the physical health and well-being domain, and as has the communication skills and general knowledge domain. So, you know, that you would see the red dot there, but over time you will see that things are improving. In terms of where indicators that are faring comparably to Victoria, but time trends are improving again. So number of days absence per prep students and students who achieve the national minimum standards in numeracy. So that's the NAPLAN in year 5. So this slide is talking about those indicators where we're faring better than Victoria, but over time, the trends are showing that there's a decline. So child protection data, so I'm just going to move my photos here so I can see. The child protection substantiations, and that's the last year was 2018, 2019. Also family violence, the incident rates per 100,000. Crime, where the victim was a child or young person, and children reported to be in excellent or very good health, an average number of days absent per full-time student, year 7, year 11, and year 12. So when I was looking at that slide, I thought that's pretty heavy, like when you look at the first 3 things and being in that safe and secure domain, if you like. So doing better, but worse over time. So also the number of young people aged 19 years who've achieved year 12 or equivalent, and the young people aged 15 years and over who are participating in volunteer work. And sorry, I'll say people age. So again, that would be anyone in the community 15 years and older. Faring worse. Sorry, I'm having a problem seeing where my photos are. Great. So faring worse than Victoria, and time trends are worsening over time. So children in out-of-home care, age 0 to 17 years, jobless families with children aged less than 15 years, the percentage of children living in low-income welfare-dependent families. And then the last 3, again, are AEDC, is AEDC data. So developmentally on track, social competence, then developmentally vulnerable on 1 or more domains, and developmentally vulnerable on 2 or more domains. So doing worse than Victoria, and over time worsening. Children reported to have difficulties with speech and language, and smoking during pregnancy. And I know that smoking during pregnancy data is fairly old. But yeah, it stood out like it was really high compared to other places. And I have heard that it still is high. So again, faring worse than Victoria, and time trends are worsening as well. So these first two indicators are part of the AEDC census. So children whose parents and caregivers are actively engaged with the school in supporting their child's learning, and children who are regularly read to or encouraged in their reading at home. And then the students who achieve national minimum standards in literacy for year 9, and school leaver participation in higher education.
Lisa,
So
do you mind if I just
like
type a question in?
Yeah,
Sorry.
I was going to say, I feel like I've ended on, I didn't know when I was putting that, oh, should I, flip it and finish with the more positive slide? But I think that what's really important is, to be upfront with the data and to say, does this make sense to us? And some of it is fairly confronting when you look at the number of indicators that are saying that Buloke isn't doing as well as Victoria, and in fact getting worse over time. And I guess I know from some of the work that I've done in Buloke how much work is going into improving things. So yeah, I just wanted to say, I imagine that's a bit disheartening to see some of that.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa, because I think we do try and be strength-based with all that we do, but this is also about making sure that we see what the data is telling us. As we've said earlier, we know that data is difficult in a small place like Buloke, and we also know it only tells half the story. So that's why we really are keen to just put these facts on the table today, but then get feedback from people about that. And we've had a question or a comment in the chat from Jerry saying that COVID might really impact the attendance and educational outcomes in the next data collection period. And yes, we will be watching to see what happens there. And sadly, that might be right. And Lisa, we've just also had someone asking whether there's a couple of things or anything that you might have been particularly surprised about. And I guess to put everyone else on notice, I'd love if people would put in the chat if there was anything that they were particularly surprised about in what they've seen, either in a positive way or in a negative way. But Lisa, maybe are you able to share a couple of things that you might have found surprising because you do know Buloke quite well, or have known Buloke quite well?
So one of the things that was maybe a bit surprising or maybe confronting to say on paper, we did, and I'll show you an example later, but we've done some little community snapshots, and I did one that was around the AEDC data, so some of that early learning stuff. And we had, sort of the yellow, red, and green, and there was just so much red. And I just thought, I looked at that and I thought, I can see that it's a really important time to sort of come together. And I think the work that Buloke, Shar and the LEN are doing, and others being here today, it's just so important to get in and think about what can we do early on to improve those outcomes. The other thing that was confronting for me, I don't know if it was surprising, but confronting, was the indicators that showed disadvantage or under-resourcing of families. And when I looked at both and knowing what I know about the evidence, you wonder, how much one is affecting the other. So those are probably the main things for me.
And Lisa, we've just had a question from Anthony. Is the measure for parents or caregivers engaging in children's education a self-reflection survey, or has it come from survey data provided by the school?
Yeah, I can tell you that it is. So that's related to the AEDC, which is done in a child's first year of schooling. And so it's a teacher's reflection. So again, great question. And sometimes understanding the data source and how things were asked is helpful, because, that's sort of a teacher's opinion of, saying how well is this family engaging, how well. So it's their measure.
Yeah, that's a great question, Anthony. And I think you'll find when, just to let people know, I did put it in the chat, but that this report will be available on our North Central LEN website, and I believe also on the Buloke Shire Council website following the presentation, and also some other snapshots and other versions that you'll see in a minute. But it is, and there is obviously all of the data is referenced on there, so you'll be able to look it up for yourself if you want to. And yeah, it is always really important to look at who's actually presented that data, isn't it, or where it's come from, what the source has been. Thanks, Lisa.
No worries. So in terms of engaging community with the data, and I know Rose mentioned that early on, this is, you know, we've spent a lot of time pulling the data together, and I know that the aim of the LEN and Buloke Shire Council is for this to be actively used and for it to inform conversations and work. And maybe there's things that you're not sure about and you've got some more localized data that you want to bring together. So we thought that talking about engaging the community was really important. And certainly, you know, the importance of data, and I know we've talked about planning, but also around advocacy and measurement. And so I know that certainly that is happening, but you know, that ongoing link to being able to measure how things are going. So in terms of engaging, sorry, I'm just moving my little pictures around. In terms of the purpose for engaging, there's a number of reasons why you would, and there's some here, but you know, basically encouraging communities to have ownership, embedding sustainability, gathering a range of voices, building stronger outcomes and communities, getting communities to actually step forward and sort of initiate some of the work, that whole of community approach. And the last one I really love is just putting evidence back in the hands of service providers and community, which I think is really important. So we're really mindful of the report because it is a few pages long. So those that are, you know, really passionate about reading data reports will love it, but we know that not everybody is going to be super keen to delve into 50-something pages. So we did create a one-pager. We do want to promote the report, of course. So we're going to use the one-pager, but also promote the report more broadly. There's stakeholder presentations like today and other discussions planned. And then, of course, some community conversations. I mentioned before about breaking down some of the data. So you'll see the AEDC, and you might see what I meant by the numbers of red, highlighted red on the summary form. So we've got a few of these, what we're calling data snapshots that I know that the LEN and the Shire are keen to use to assist with some conversations and highlighting some of the data. There's 4 of those, but also we've done a bit of a report card, and this is just one page out of it, but that will basically show you at a quick glance how the trend's going and how we benchmark when compared to state. So I'm not sure if there were any other questions that are coming in, any comments.
There's another comment here from Jerry, which is beautifully made, Jerry, that the low school leaver data for not engaging higher ed is true for all of rural and regional Victoria. So it's, you know, not just a Buloke specific thing. There's a lot of, while there's a lot of successful post-school destinations, what we want for every young person is that higher education is a choice, e.g. that transport and cost not the barriers, if this is the path that you want to follow. It's very well made, Jerry. And yes, Charmaine's asking, may we have access to the snapshots? And yes, we will definitely pop that up as well, Charmaine. There's 4 snapshots that have been put together I guess our aim is to put more together tailored to particular needs, because as we pointed out at the start, and Rose and Anthony pointed out beautifully too, that we really do want to continue this conversation with the community, and we want to make sure that this data is in the hands of people in the community and accessible to everyone, because not everyone, although I think this report's super compelling, I'm not sure that everyone wants to sit down and read that many pages of the report. So people might be interested in different sections and different, so we've actually put them under certain heading, to Charmaine. So yeah, they'll be available as well. And Julie's also put in all the links. If people want to download them right away, they can, if they don't want to wait until after the presentation. So thanks for that, Julie, too.
Lisa, can I just add something? I mean, I think it's really important that you've done a great job of a real snapshot of what the report tells us, but it really is a broad area to cover. And as Jane suggested, there won't be a lot of people who might want to sit and read it front to back, but if they can dig in there and bring out whatever's of interest to them, and we can continue the conversation, then that's what this is all about, starting conversations with communities and providers, and actually delving, I guess, even further into the reasons behind the data. The data is one thing, but the story behind it is super important. And in some cases, people will see data they don't actually agree with, and that would be even more interesting for us to talk about. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure, Barry. And I've always been a big one over the years to question some of the data. Some of the communities that I've lived in or worked in where I've seen data and I've thought, that's not right. You know, one that stood out for me years ago in Swan Hill was saying how well young people were supported with their mental health, that they had really great access to services. That might be a bit truer now with Headspace in the picture, but back in the day, I just thought, oh, that doesn't sit right with me. And sometimes when you understand the data and how it's collected and the sample size, and when you start asking some questions, you understand, oh, wait a minute, maybe that's not fully telling our story. And maybe we need to do something locally to get a better picture. So I, as much as, you know, I have pulled this data together, I do really encourage people to question and look for where the gaps are and what you can do to fill them.
There's another great comment in here from Narissa, Lisa, just saying, thank you. The data used in the development in our services school readiness plan was similar to this, but what you've provided here is much easier to read. So hopefully, it will actually be useful. It's a shame you didn't have it, Narissa, before you did your school readiness funding plans, because it would be very helpful for that. You're right, but hopefully it might be helpful in terms of your service delivery moving forward. And yeah, Susie's made a great comment too. I think that this data could prompt others to think about what other data they need. And that's totally true. This is, even though this is a lot of data, it's certainly, as we said, not the full picture. And we're very aware of that, aren't we, Lisa?
Yeah, like if somebody said to me, what else would you do if you could in terms of data? I would definitely advocate for more data that tells the story of young people. And the most recent data that communities can have.
And an excellent point from Rose here in terms of seeing if the data, oops, sorry, my screen's moved, too much flicking down. Seeing if the data matches what you are seeing in your own organisation. That's very true. Cross-referencing with that is a great place to start the conversation. And, you know, we've got so many experienced people here who work with children and young people, and you know children and young people in your community as well. So we need to cross-reference and compare with what you know and what you see on the ground as well. That's a critical part of the conversation we want to have moving forward.
Yeah, can I also just add in lastly, even though, you know, sometimes you see that green dot there that says, yay, Buloke's doing better, I'd still look at that number and say, are we happy with that? So whilst you might be doing better in terms of child protection substantiations, are you happy with that number? So just because there's a green dot there, it doesn't mean you shouldn't tackle it. Yeah.
Now, Julie's asked a very practical question, Lisa. If possible, could people just briefly turn on their cameras? And we know people have got them off probably a lot of the time because they don't have great connection, but just so we can take a quick photo, that would be wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Smile.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. And Narissa, some more great feedback here that I'm very pleased about this, that you don't have to have your application in until the 10th, so you've still got time. So that's great. If you need some more assistance, please yell out and we'll give you some more contacts of people to talk to in a minute too, that will be able to definitely help you. If you need any more help, that's great. And another very important point in the chat, Lisa mentioned the MDI, the Middle Use Development Index, earlier on in the conversation, and that's something that our schools undertake for us, well, not for us, for our community. It's a voluntary survey that they undertake with students, and look, it's absolutely, as Lisa said, it provides absolutely critical information straight from the voice of the young person, so at grade 5 through to year 8. So yeah, we're just very grateful to our schools who get on board and our young people who fill that in for us, because that gives us invaluable data and information straight from them as to how they're going around their health and well-being in particular. Yeah, and we've got some other work. I won't bombard you with other things, but we've got some other things that feed off that as well. So it's really critical, and we thank the schools for doing that for us.
I've just got to say there would have been a huge gap. I would not have had much well-being data at all for young people in Buloke if it wasn't for the work of the MDI that I know the schools have been engaged with. So yeah, I can't encourage you enough to keep that up. Some really interesting stuff there around optimism and you know, sleeping habits, healthy eating. There's just some great data there, and whilst it's not a big trend, it's been done twice, it's still interesting to see from 2017 to 2019 how things are going.
Thanks, Lisa. And Barry's made a great point here too, the data which Lisa presented that tells us that our most vulnerable are amongst the worst data, and worsening is really something for us to all consider. And hopefully in a small, you know, a smaller place like Buloke, we can have eyes on children and young people who are most vulnerable and can provide the wraparound support. As Rose said beautifully before, it's not one organisation or not one individual can do that. It's a role for every single one of us to be involved with. So yeah, thanks. That's a great comment. And look, at this point, I'd just really like to keep going with the questions. That's absolutely fine. But I'd really like to thank I guess it's a steering group that helped put this together. So Lisa was our author, but Rose and Barry supported from the Shire end and provided fabulous data along the way. And Susie and Abby from the LEN who, yeah, I guess passed a critical eye over all of it at every step, which is really important in putting this together. Yes, I want to thank them. And I also want to thank Craig and Fiona and the team at DHHS, who were really so helpful in helping us get access to data and more up-to-date data, because even though when you see this report, some of it may not look as up-to-date as what we would love it to be, I can assure you that it actually really isn't up-to-date as you can actually get public access to. So we're very grateful for the assistance that DHHS and DET too, Kathy Nolan and the team at DET also facilitated access to data for us. So we're really lucky in Buloke. We've got a great report. You may have read some of the State of Victoria or State of Bendigo reports, which are all fantastic. But I think we've really been able to pull together some great elements from all of them that actually, particularly that trending side, I think is a really great new, Lisa's new idea, which really shows us, because sometimes we might actually be doing better, say, than Victoria in an area, but if we're actually tracking the wrong direction, we really want to know that. And similarly, if we're actually tracking the right direction, we actually need to know what we're doing that's actually making sure we keep that trajectory going in that direction. So, yeah, we need to know the trends as well as where we are in amongst everyone else. And I know Barry's made a couple of good points along the way that sometimes, even when we see that we're doing better than Victoria, we're not very happy with that data as a community. So we want to do better than that, and we know we can do better. So we need to work together for that. Some great positive comments. Thank you, everyone in the chat. And so thank you so much, Lisa, for walking us through this data. And as we said, this is really just a walkthrough today and an orientation to the way the report looks. And we hope that you will all go away and you know, some of you may read it start to finish, but we hope that you'll delve into some of it, and that you will, that you'll actually share with us what you think, because we know obviously you haven't had a good chance to look at it yet, and we obviously didn't have time today to look at the great detail, but we really do want to know your feedback. And we also want your ideas on how, as we said, we can work together to use this data to plan and advocate and measure going forward, because that's what it's for. It's actually just to provide us with that sort of a baseline, I guess, that we can then work from. Yes, and absolutely, Barry, we can come back if there's more questions at any point in time. And Greg's saying that the evidence-based benchmarking is great and will help show the impact of interventions over time. Absolutely, beautiful segue for me, if that's okay, Greg, and then we'll come back to any questions. So the other reason we really put this together is because of the work that we are doing with our new Strong Families, Strong Community Buloke Strong Children, Strong Family, Buloke initiative. And there's the charter up on the screen. Thank you, Lisa. So some of you may have seen the charter and some of you may know about the work we've just started doing. It's actually not a new program. It's actually a partnership again. And it's a partnership because we actually need all of us to work together to build on the great things that we know are already happening in Buloke, but we need to work together for the next steps to even do a better job to support our children and young people to thrive in Buloke. So you might, just a quick history lesson, this Strong Families, Strong Children began almost 3 years ago in Loddonshire with a fantastic, generous funding from William Buckland Foundation, who backed the work that we were doing there. And then Helen McPherson Smith Trust have come on board more recently this year and said, we think you're doing a great job of measuring and working together. We want you to continue that and across Buloke, and we're also looking across other shires as well, but at the moment across Buloke, and have supported us moving forward. And I guess that's also increased our scale a little bit, which is great. So I'd really like to introduce to you Abby Mulquini, and I don't know whether you're going to be able to see her on the screen. Abby, can you just say hello, because you'll come up perhaps for people then.
Hi, everybody.
So this is Abby. So Abby's our early years facilitator for our Buloke Strong Families, Strong Children. And I guess in terms of talking about next steps will be driven by our Strong Families, Strong Children initiative, which is really an overarching initiative for birth to 8 years, and again, a partnership with the Shire and a broader partnership with lots of other people across our community as well, authorising people as well as the people who are actually working directly with families and children, and also most importantly a partnership with our children and families directly, because we absolutely need to hear their stories as well. So thanks, Abby. And then the other important person of the team is Susie Hawke, who on my screen is sitting beside Abby but may not be.
Hi, everybody.
So Susie is our fantastic facilitator in Loddon and is managing across Loddon and Buloke now. And Susie, like Abby, has a strong background. Well, Susie's actually a very experienced speech pathologist and brings that to the job. And Abby brings her teaching background as well as being a mum of a child in this particular group. So it's really important if you can actually live it every day. So thanks, Abby and Susie. I guess we're going to put in the chat. Oh, look, the efficiency here is amazing. Thank you, Julie. Julie's put Susie and Abby's details in the chat. We would encourage you to get in touch with Abby or Susie and find out more about this initiative. I know as I said, because of COVID, we actually rolled this forward a little bit. So we've really only started in the last 3 months with the Strong Families, Strong Children in Buloke, which will give us more time at the other end. So we we really encourage you to get in touch. I know already there's some great partnerships and some great relationship building going on with maternal and child health and other early years people. So please reach out. Abby and Susie will reach out to you, and they'll be hitting the road. Well, they already are hitting the road, I know, to come around and come to your communities, because that's what we need to do. We need to be in your communities with you. We know there's so much great work going on already in Buloke, and we want to get on board and support you moving forward. So I also wanted to just pay tribute as to return the favour, I guess, but really sincerely to Rose and Anthony and Barry, and say thank you for the great partnership with the Shire, because that's absolutely critical to our outcomes. We know from our learnings in Loddon that we need to work together, and we actually need to all pull in the same direction. So thank you very much for coming to the table always, Rose and Barry and Anthony, and being so willing to work with us. It's not just about the Shire and the Len, though, as we've pointed out. It's about a much bigger partnership, so we will be making this much bigger. And so we invite you to all come on board and work together with us. And as we said, try and make sure that every child in Buloke thrives. I think it's ambitious, but I think that we can do it, because we've got eyes on a lot of our children, and we can actually provide the wraparound support that they need. So yeah, thank you very much. And we might just check if there's some more questions, will we? Okay, so Barry, you're doing a great job of keeping me on track here. So we do actually have a recording. So if there was someone that was we know there's quite a few apologies today, so we'll offer the recording to them. But if there's anyone else that you think would like to hear the recording, or you'd like to hear it again, please let us know. We're more than happy to share that with you. We also did indicate that we're extremely happy to do another presentation in terms of a general one. If people want to hear it, again, just let us know. But we're particularly keen to get out and actually start having some conversations in communities around this data. And again, we're going to be led by you people out in the community. So if you can let us know how you think that might best be done, because this is actually about engaging everyone around working with children and families. And I say engaging, but it's also about activation, how we can actually activate together and have some action plans that fall out of that. And we're super conscious that all the communities in Buloke are very different. So we know that there'll need to be place-based nuances around this. And as Lisa said before, we also know that there's some local community data in a lot of places that we'll be able to add to this as well, so we can have these conversations together and, you know, work on plans together as to how we move forward and have the best outcomes for our children and young people. Thanks. We've got people saying they're looking forward to the actions, and that's great. That's excellent. So I'm not sure if there's any more questions or comments. No, anything else that any of our team wanted to add, Susie or Abby or Rose or Barry or Anthony? Anything
I'm just happy to throw in just an anecdote, which is where I think this can lead, which was, we didn't have this data. I'm sure we had it, but it was everywhere, right? And we had the Royal Flying Doctors come up to launch optometry services, and Jerry was there, and you know, we were interested in that because it was great, but really we had some data around speech intervention. So we grabbed him at that point in time and said, this is what we really need. He went away, did some work and funded it. Now we've had some trouble securing that provider, but the funding is there. And I think Inglewood and District Services are trying to recruit for that role now. So that avenue that this provides going forward is critical, and that we all have this data and we can grab and I think a very clear advocacy piece around this, which money doesn't fix everything, clearly, and this isn't all just about going to attract money and roles that are short-term and don't deliver, but understanding a model that can provide sustainability going forward. But I think that this opens up so much, and then the momentum that goes with it. So I really look forward to, you know, as we come together and understand the model that works best for us, that, you know, is sustainable, being able to throw this in front of all of the funding. Well, there's not, but there's some people in this room that do provide funding and provide services into Buloke. And we talk a lot about place-based, and we talk about a lot about how we believe we can potentially be serviced better. We feel like we're a little bit armed. And I guess I say that because you know, and I don't want to get too off track here, but we sit there and we talk about social housing. There's been a big announcement around that. And some of the thing that's coming back to me is I know the anecdotal evidence around social housing because it's there and it keeps getting thrown, but people keep saying there's no data to support that, the need in Buloke. Well, we've got a job to do. And so I think what we've got here is real evidence of need for increased support, increased intervention, and take away any of the work that everyone's doing here. Everyone's doing an amazing job, but we all know that there's more that, you know, if we had more resources that we could all do together. So I really look forward to this, and I really congratulate everyone, and particularly Lisa, in pulling all this together. I think the path forward is, and it is sort of not quite paved, but we'll work together to get it there. And I feel a lot clearer in our direction as we go forward.
Thanks, Anthony. That's great advocacy, and I don't think it ever hurts to ask the question about funding. That's great. And look, just to finish, I'm looking at Susie, because to finish your little anecdote, we actually have some very recent good news about how you could finish the story, perhaps, Susie, for Anthony.
Yeah, more than happy to finish the story, although it's not finished, it'll be ongoing. But we have, like you said, used that data really well to advocate for the Royal Flying Doctors Service to support the speech pathology across Buloke as well as Loddon. And so, yeah, they're very exciting news that we will be engaging someone, and they will work across both the Loddon and the Buloke area. So that is really exciting moving forward into 2021. It will be a good year. Yes, it will be a great year compared to this one anyway. But I also just wanted to add that it is important to have the data for the service provision, but it also is important to have this data now where Abby and I can go out to the communities and have a real discussion with the communities about what are the things that resonate with them, and actually what are the things that communities themselves can change. I mean, service provision absolutely is important, and we know it's very lacking in rural and remote areas, not just Victoria, but Australia-wide. So it's great to have the data to show that, but it's also great to use this data to help communities help themselves and look at what we can use or what we can do to shift those things. There's an awful lot of data that's been presented today, and that's not going to be all shifted at the one time. So maybe a small community can look at what is that important data that can make the most change for them, and then build on those small changes from there. So that's why it's really exciting to have the data to be able to develop snapshots as well, because the snapshots will be absolutely more palatable and easier for us to use with community conversations. So thank you very much, Lisa, for doing all the hard work and getting it all together for us.
Thanks, Susie. That was a really well made point, and you're so right. It is about the community now. And I just wanted to add a little bit more to that story, Anthony, and just say that I guess I wanted to show how important partnerships are, because as you said, you started that journey and you had some data, and East Wimmera Health really worked hard to try and get someone on board, and they were unable to recruit. But then we were actually through a lot of hard work from Susie in terms of making the link, and us having data in Loddon as well. We were able to say, okay, we can actually have a place-based approach to this, a different place-based approach, and we're actually going to recruit to Inglewood but still service Buloke as well. So the outcome has been fantastic, and it's all because of partnerships working together and saying there's more than one way to do this. We can actually make this work in our community. So, and Royal Flying Doctors have reflected that back to us very strongly, that they knew they had confidence that we could actually deliver if they gave us, the money, and we approached it in a place-based way. Yeah, so thank you everyone very much. We're right on time, which is not one of my strengths, so that's fantastic. Thank you so much to Julie Slater for all of her background work. Thank you to everyone who came along today. Thank you for your participation and for your input. But we really hope this is only the start of the conversation. We really welcome any continuing conversation via email, via phone calls, and we will be back in touch with you as well. But yeah, we thank you very much.
Jane, just before we let everyone go, we do have a quick survey.
We do have
And
a
I've
quick
just
survey.
popped the link up in the chat. So if you wouldn't mind clicking on the Survey Monkey link, it's only 6 questions and one of them's a tick box. And then once you finish the survey and you hit done, if you close it, you'll come straight back into the Zoom.
It should be 3 or 4 minutes tops, everyone. Thank you so much. Sorry about the homework.
Survey Monkey.
We really do want to know what you think, just your first thoughts anyway. We need thinking music, Julie, for next time.
Yeah, no, I can try.
Might be like our music yesterday. We got into a
Where I
genre
keep
that we
getting
weren't
Lady
comfortable
Gaga.
with.
Don't want to subject everybody to that.
Oh, Chris, there's a comment from Chris I'm just seeing. Sorry, Chris. I'd be really keen on working around developing data in real time, as we know the AEDC data that provides us with information about the state of children is now due to be collected. Great point, Chris. And the data collected in 2018 was not representative of all of Buloke Shire. That is a really excellent point. And yes, we would be really keen to look at that as well, because as you said, to start with, it's not necessarily representative, and it's also only every 3 years, so it can only give us that point in time. Not that it's not fantastic data, but yes, that'll be collected again at the start of 2021. And Buloke is also involved with some other shires in a comprehensive monitoring project now, Chris, that will actually provide real-time, more frequent real-time data. So it'll be about actually capturing information from children, young people and their families from birth to 21 years every 3 years. So at birth at 3 years of age, 6 years of age, 9, all the way through to 21. And that will actually be collected at the start of 2021 in line with the AEDC data. So it's an AEDC extension project, but it goes, obviously there's information before the AEDC at 6 and after the AEDC at 6, all the way through to 21. And it's all about us making sure we're not dropping the ball at any particular stage. So, you know, we're talking about early years here, and Lisa made the point beautifully at the start too, that we need to be aware of all of the stages, and we can't afford to drop the ball at any stage. So we'll definitely keep you in the loop around the comprehensive monitoring project. We've had Deakin University in a large partnership involving the Potter Foundation and DET and some other big organisations who are actually who are going to stick by us for about 3 years to do this project. So we really feel so Little Old Loddon and Buloke and Gannawarra are actually going to be the focus for the next 3 years with this big project. So, and it'll provide us with fantastic ongoing data and more real-time data as well. So another thing to add to the mix. So thanks for that question. Yes, and Susie's made a great point. It's really important to collect more data prior to school and AEDC data as well. So that's part of the comprehensive monitoring. It happens at birth, 3 years, 6 and 6 years as well. So it is absolutely critical to, if we want our children to arrive at school ready to learn, we actually need to start from birth. So yeah, I'm seeing lots of nodding from lots of early years people. So thank you so much to everyone. I think you've done all your homework. So thank you. And 501, that's pretty good. We'll say goodbye and please be in touch. That'd be fantastic. Thank you very much, everyone.
See ya.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.